Welcome to ArtScapades through the Norwalk Public Library, bringing the galleries to you. Today, we're going to be covering Art and Travel America. Um, and today's lecture, we'll look at the famous works of art that have been seen in American museums, some of the greatest artists spanning from Renaissance to the modern era, including I'll probably mess up the pronunciation, but Da Vinci, Renoir, Van Gogh, Matisse, Cezanne, Picasso, Sargent, Wood, Hopper, Pollock, Jasper Johns, and more. And today we have Jody with us. We had the last time. Her and Robin, Jody Stifelman, Robin Hoffman, have been teaching and presenting about art since 1998 all over libraries, schools, museums, sort of in the New England area and Florida. So welcome, Jody, and Art and Travel America.
Oh, thanks, Louise. I'm going to share my screen with you. And okay, so you should be seeing my Artscapades screen. Um,
Yes, we're seeing it.
yes. Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. I want to thank the Norwalk Public Library and, of course, Louise for having us back. And I always want to thank my partner, Robin Hoffman, because as we always say, our lectures are truly a team project. If you have any questions or comments during the lecture, you can type them in the chat box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll talk about them, answer them at the end of the presentation. We can also open the Zoom and actually chat in person afterwards. So tonight we'll be looking at where some of the world's best known works of art can be seen in museums here in America. If you were with us last month, you saw we talked about where you could see them in Europe, but this time we're here. While many of these masterpieces are found in well-known museums in major cities, some are not. So you may learn about some new museums along the way to add to your next itinerary. And obviously, we can't touch on all of them. I'm sure you've also found some great small museums in your travels. But interestingly, as we did put this lecture together, Robin and I noticed that we're looking at art that is found primarily in museums in the Midwest and in the Northeast. So in the Northeast, the concentration of famous paintings is due to a combination of factors, including its role as an early cultural and economic center, the presence of historic art colonies and formative art schools here, and the proactive collecting efforts of affluent individuals and institutions that took place during the 19th and 20th centuries. The region's established universities and museums, as well as the influx of artists drawn to its cultural environment and artistic communities, created a feedback kind of loop that enriched its collections over time. The regionalist movement, which flourished in the Midwest during the 1930s, saw artists depict American landscapes, folklore, and rural life. And these works, often considered iconic examples of American art, are now prominently featured in museums across the country, but particularly in the Midwest. So we begin in the hub of the Midwest, Chicago. The Art Institute of Chicago's building was constructed for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, and its collection has expanded to include almost 300,000 works of art. While there are many wonderful works in their collection, the following are their most well known. So this is French post-impressionist Georges Seurat's best known and largest painting. Seurat worked on it for 2 years. In it, he depicted people from different social classes strolling and relaxing in a park just west of Paris on La Grande Jatte, which was an island in the Seine River. Although he took his subjects from modern life, Seurat sought to evoke the sense of timelessness associated with ancient art. He once wrote, I want to make modern people, in their essential traits, move about as they do on those friezes and place them on canvases organized by harmonies of color. So you might think you've seen this painting before in New York in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but the Met's is actually a sketch done as a study for Chicago's final work. And I think you can see in comparison the much looser brushwork. Seurat painted La Grande Jatte in his new pointillist style, and this new technique led to him being sometimes referred to as Seurat the Dot. So, American regionalist artist Grant Wood's American Gothic was exhibited for the first time at the Art Institute of Chicago and was awarded a prize of $300. The Art Institute purchased the painting directly from Wood after the exhibition. The painting became an instant sensation, its ambiguity prompting viewers to speculate about the figures and their story. Many thought the work was a satirical comment on Midwesterners out of step with a modernizing world. But Wood meant for it to convey a positive image of rural American values, offering a vision of reassurance at the beginning of the Great Depression. Now, the impetus for this painting came while Wood was visiting the small town of Eldon in his native Iowa. And there he spotted a little wood farmhouse with a single oversized window made in a style called Carpenter Gothic. Wood said, I imagined American Gothic people with their faces stretched out long to go with this American Gothic house. Now, Wood used his sister Nan and his dentist as models for the couple, dressing them as if they were, quote, tin types from my old family album. Now, originally, Wood wanted them to be a farmer and his wife, but Nan, apparently embarrassed at being depicted as the wife of someone twice her age, began telling people that the painting was of a man and his daughter, which Grant later confirmed. Wood's painting has become part of American popular culture, and the couple has been the subject of endless parodies, and I'm sure you've seen countless others. They're pretty funny. So, Nighthawks is American realist artist Edward Hopper's most famous work. It is one of the best known images of 20th century art and depicts an all night diner in which there are three customers, all seemingly lost in their own thoughts. Hopper's use of light playing on simplified shapes gives this painting its haunting beauty. Fluorescent lights had just come into use in the early 1940s, and the all night diner emits an eerie glow like a beacon on the dark street corner. Hopper eliminated any reference to an entrance, and the viewers drawn to the light is shut out from the scene by a seamless wedge of glass. As is typical of Hopper's work, he carefully thought out the diagonals in this painting. He used them to create a strong sense of depth. There is also something of a cinematic quality, which is further emphasized by the dramatic contrast of the stark electrical light inside the diner and the dark night outside. Now, the diner itself was based on a real one in Greenwich Village, but with its carefully constructed composition and lack of narrative, it has a timeless, universal quality that transcends its particular location. Well, the museum purchased the artwork from Hopper's dealer in 1942, the same year as it was painted. So we travel a bit east from Chicago to the Detroit Institute of Art. Founded in 1885 as the Detroit Museum of Art, the museum was renamed and moved in 1927 to its current location. And the new building, designed by Paul Kret, is a Beaux-Arts structure and was referred to as the Temple of Art. And you'll get a peek of it in one of our images ahead. This is one of James Abbott McNeill Whistler's many nocturnes, which are characterized by a moody atmosphere, a subtle palette, and overall tonalist qualities. This work depicts a fireworks display in London's Cremorne Gardens and is probably Whistler's most infamous painting. It was the central issue of a libel suit that involved the art critic John Ruskin and the artist Whistler. Ruskin had publicly slandered the work by making the statement, I have seen and heard much of Cockney impudence before now, but never expected to hear a coxcomb ask 200 guineas for flinging a pot of paint in the public's face. Well, Whistler won the libel suit. However, he was only he was only awarded the token damages of 1 farthing. Whistler's painting was a gift to the Detroit Institute of Arts in 1946 from Dexter M. Ferry Jr., a Michigan businessman and politician. So perhaps the most famous artwork at the Detroit Institute of Arts is this room filled with frescoes by Diego Rivera. Rivera and his wife, Frida Kahlo, lived in Detroit as part of their decade-long stay in America. They were in Detroit for about a year in the middle of the Great Depression. Rivera's Detroit industry murals were commissioned in 1932 by William Valentiner, the museum director at the time, and Edsel Ford, who was the son of Henry Ford. The murals are a series of 27 fresco panels that depict the Ford Motor Company's River Rouge plant and Detroit's industrial landscape. The murals cover all 4 walls of the garden court, now referred to as the Rivera Court. And Rivera spent months sketching and photographing the factory before starting the murals, which he worked on with assistants. The mural depicts the manufacturing process, including the assembly of automobile bodies, the power of machinery, and the diverse workforce. Rivera emphasizes the intricate relationship between human labor and industrial processes, exploring the physical demands of factory work and the impact of technology on the workforce. So heading further east to the coast in Washington, D.C., you will find an exceptional number of paintings that you may have thought you would have needed a passport to see. Andrew W. Mellon donated a substantial art collection and funds for construction of the National Gallery of Art. Opened in 1937, the National Gallery's collection traces the development of Western art from the Middle Ages to the present. So this is the only painting by Leonardo da Vinci in the Western Hemisphere. It is a portrait of 17-year-old Ginevra de' Benci, the daughter of a wealthy Florentine banker. Thought by some to have been commissioned as an engagement portrait, she doesn't look very happy, so may not have actually welcomed the marriage. On the reverse side is a design of a wreath, palm, and laurel encircling a juniper sprig with an inscription in Latin meaning beauty adorns virtue. The juniper may either represent chastity or it may be a play on words, as the Italian name of juniper is Ginevra. So around 1700, the work came into the possession of the royal family of Liechtenstein. During World War II, the royals hid her from the Nazis, first in a monastery and then in the wine cellar of their castle. The work remained in their hands until 1967, when it was acquired by the National Gallery from Franz Joseph II, then the Prince of Liechtenstein, for a record price of a painting at that time of between $5 and $6 million. Despite having such a high price tag, Ginevra de' Benci traveled to America in 1967 via airplane, but without any fanfare, and she was sitting in first class. Sitting next to the painting was the art conservator who had verified that she was indeed a work by da Vinci. So technically, the painting traveled as his wife, Mrs. Mario Modestini. Well, of course, all the baffled stewardesses and flight passengers saw was a suitcase carefully strapped in with a seatbelt. No one knew that the case had been carefully constructed to cradle a Da Vinci masterpiece and to maintain a cool temperature of 44 degrees for the flight's duration. Only right before boarding had Modestini sent a carefully coded telegram saying, "The bird flies." The National Gallery of Art also has a significant collection of Rembrandt paintings. Rembrandt painted this self-portrait in 1659 when he had suffered financial failure. His spacious house and other possessions had been auctioned the previous year to satisfy his creditors. So despite his artistic success, Rembrandt's penchant for acquiring art, prints, and rare items led him to live beyond his means. In this late work, Rembrandt's surroundings are blurred, but his illuminated face is finely detailed. Deep-set eyes fix intently into us, the viewer's eyes, expressing the wisdom gained from life experiences. Interpreting a painting on the basis of an artist's biography may be misleading, particularly an artist whose life has been romanticized to the extent of Rembrandt's. Before the painting was cleaned in 1992, Thick layers of discolored varnish had given the portrait a heavy, brooding quality, but when the varnish was removed during restoration, the rich range of pinks and other flesh tones on his face immediately improved the reading of Rembrandt's expression. The light that so effectively illuminates Rembrandt's head also accents his left shoulder and to a lesser extent to his clasped hands. French Impressionist Mary Cassatt is best known for her images of women and children, as in this intimate scene. Cassatt was also a strong advocate for women's rights. The sunflower in this painting is likely a statement of support for women's voting rights. At the time, the sunflower was recognized as a symbol of the suffrage movement in the United States. This Cassatt work began its journey to the National Gallery with the famous Impressionist art dealer Paul Durand-Ruel in Paris. Durand-Ruel had originally sold the work to someone else, but then reacquired the work for Louisian Havemeyer. Mary Cassatt and the Havemeyers had a long and close relationship, with Cassatt serving as an advisor and mentor to the Havemeyers in their interest in building their art collection, particularly their interest in Impressionist art. Cassatt helped the Havemeyers acquire numerous Impressionist works, and a lifelong friendship developed between Louisian Havemeyer and Cassatt. Chester Dale then bought the work from Havemeyer, and Dale then bequeathed it to the National Gallery of Art in 1963. So head north from Washington to the Baltimore Museum of Art. The museum was created as part of the city revitalization plan after the Great Fire of 1904. Opened in 1914, the museum quickly grew through loans and grants and houses a collection of more than 95,000 objects. The highlight of the museum is the Cone collection, brought together by Baltimore sisters Clarabelle and Etta Cone. Accomplished collectors, the sisters amassed a wealth of works by artists including Henri Matisse, Pablo Picasso, Paul Cézanne, Edgar Degas, Paul Gauguin, Vincent van Gogh, and Pierre-Auguste Renoir, nearly all of which were donated to the museum. The Cones were in Paris at obviously a fabulous time. Etta Cone met Henri Matisse for the first time in 1906 when she visited his studio. At the time, Etta lived in Paris and had an opportunity to see the developing art scene firsthand. She immediately felt a kinship with Matisse and returned several times to his studio to purchase drawings and watercolors. Etta's sister Clarabelle also joined her, and together they collected hundreds of Matisse's works, including Blue Nude, which is a life-size nude considered unprecedented for its scale and physicality at the time. The Yellow Dress, which depicts a woman in a striking yellow dress, seated with a serene expression, her posture conveying poise and reserve. And Large Reclining Nude, which began as a somewhat conventional nude, reclining with a chair and vase of flowers. But over the course of 6 months, it became a masterpiece of geometry, color, and abstracted form. Matisse traveled to Baltimore in 1930, and there he learned about Etta's plans to support the newly established Baltimore Museum of Art. And this prompted Matisse to continue to create and offer works to Etta, building the collection to approximately 700 works. They form the basis of the Cone collection of modern art at the museum today. Now, also part of the Cone sister collection, this is one of the earliest of about 70 paintings by Gauguin, produced during his first visit to Tahiti. The painting depicts Tahura, Gauguin's 13-year-old native wife and mother of his child. Gauguin returned to Paris before the birth, and by the time he returned, Tahura had remarried a local man with whom she brought up the child. The work was acquired by Edgar Degas when it was first exhibited. It was subsequently sold to various collectors and eventually purchased in 1937 by Etta Cone and bequeathed to the Baltimore Museum of Art in 1950. So traveling further up the East Coast, Philadelphia has many wonderful art museums, including the Barnes Foundation. The Barnes was founded in 1922 by Albert C. Barnes, who made his fortune by co-developing Argyrol, an antiseptic silver compound that was used to combat gonorrhea and inflammations of the eye, ear, nose, and throat. In 1911, Barnes reconnected with his high school classmate, the artist William Glackens. The following year, Barnes sent Glackens to Paris with $20,000 to buy paintings. And it's hard to believe, but Glackens returned with 33 works of art that played a key role in building the Barnes Foundation's collection. Glackens' own paintings are also part of the collection. However, Woman Seated on Red Sofa was created after Glackens' trip to Paris and is influenced by the color and decorative styles of Matisse. Following the success of Glackens' buying campaign, Barnes himself traveled to Paris twice later that year buying more art. The Barnes collection was originally housed in Marion, Pennsylvania, about a half hour outside of Philadelphia. Unable to attract sufficient attendance, the foundation considered a move to Philadelphia, but the trust stipulated that the paintings in the collection be, quote, kept in exactly the places they are. So, in order to get around this provision, the trustees proposed that they build an exact replica of the interior of the Barnes in Philadelphia. And in 2012, the collection was able to be moved to its current location where it thrives, and it looks like they're in exactly the same places. The Barnes collection includes 69 works by French artist Paul Cézanne, including this very famous one. For much of the 1890s, Cézanne lived at his father's estate in Aix-en-Provence, where he made paintings of the local landscape and of the people who worked in the area. And here Cézanne shows a group of farmhands enjoying a game of cards, one of 5 canvases he devoted to this subject. In this one, the largest and most ambitious of the series, Cézanne gives these humble figures an imposing presence, depicting them on a scale usually reserved for grander subjects like history or mythology. The Barnes also houses works by Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Henri Matisse, Pablo Picasso, and Vincent van Gogh, among many other treasures. Of the 181 works in the collection by Renoir, Barnes identified this one as his favorite. The canvas dates from Renoir's late period when Renoir focused on timeless Arcadian themes instead of the contemporary urban and suburban motifs of his earlier Impressionist works. In a 1924 letter, Barnes wrote that the painting represents, quote, the summation of Renoir's powers. Now, a visit to Philadelphia would not be complete without a stop at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, home of the famous steps from the Sylvester Stallone movie Rocky. In 1877, the museum opened to the public in Fairmount Park in what had served as the Centennial's Fine Arts Pavilion. By 1900, the museum had outgrown this space, and plans for a new building gained momentum in the following decade. In 1917, when the Benjamin Franklin Parkway was nearing its completion, the city approved the final design for a new building, which opened its doors in March of 1928. Post-Impressionist Vincent van Gogh painted this luminous image of sunflowers from memory in the depths of winter in 1889. Throughout his 10-year career, Van Gogh painted sunflowers repeatedly in different arrangements and settings. The shapes, colors, and cheerfulness of the modest flower appealed to him. He associated its yellow color with sunshine, the South, and Christ, the light of the world. In August of 1888, Van Gogh began painting sunflowers spilling from earthenware pots set against yellow and blue backgrounds. Over a single week, he painted 4 images of 12 sunflowers against a turquoise background. The speed of Van Gogh's work was driven by enthusiasm as well as necessity, since the sunflowers were destined to wilt and fade. Now, this painting is a variation on one of those works, which is now in the Neue Pinakothek Art Museum in Munich. Far from being a simple copy, it was a new interpretation, as I said, from memory, that gave each flower a pronounced personality. And it is the only version of this iconic series permanently on display in the United States. This painting was donated to the Philadelphia Museum of Art in 1963 by Mr. and Mrs. Carroll S. Tyson Jr., and Tyson was a landscape artist and well-known art collector from the area. So Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec was among the first customers of the Moulin Rouge, which was a Montmartre nightclub boasting nightly performances of the can-can. Lautrec began this canvas on one of the largest and most ambitious of his career shortly after the venue opened in October of 1889. A handwritten inscription on its back, probably by Lautrec, identifies the subject as "The Training of the New Girls by Valentin the Boneless." Valentin was a nightclub star renowned for his flexibility and is depicted here as a slender, hatted figure with pointed toes and rubbery legs facing a female partner whose animated kicks reveal her red stockings and frothy white petticoats. Highlighting an informal moment between performances, the painting offers a survey of the club's clientele and its scintillating entertainment. It was purchased by the owners of the Moulin Rouge, who hung it above the bar. And the painting was donated in 1934 to the Philadelphia Museum of Art by American collector and philanthropist Henry Plumer McEhenny, who had been chairman of the museum. Now, New Descending a Staircase #2 was the painting that launched Marcel Duchamp into the realms of notoriety, although it took months to find its way into the public gaze. Intended for the Paris Salon des Indépendants show of 1912, it appears to have been too independent for the committee to approve and was vetoed. Duchamp looked elsewhere, and the painting traveled abroad, where it was seen at an exhibition in Barcelona before being moved on to New York's Armory Show in 1913. At the time, many critics were shocked by their first glimpse of a Cubist futurist painting. Cartoonists ridiculed the piece, in which motion is depicted by successive superimposed images. The stark color and harsh angles are suggestive of an aggression that many viewers found unsettling. During the Armory Show, the painting was bought by the San Francisco lawyer and art dealer Frederick C. Torrey, who hung it in his home in Berkeley. In 1919, after commissioning a full-sized copy of the work, Torrey sold the original to Louise and Walter Conrad Ahrensberg, and in 1954, it entered the collection of the Philadelphia Museum of Art as a bequest from the Ahrensbergs, and there it is displayed as part of the permanent collection alongside preliminary studies and a later copy by Duchamp. So just an hour or so away from Philadelphia, in New York, you have your pick of museums. So we're going to start at the Met. The earliest roots of the Met date back to 1866 in Paris, France, when a group of Americans agreed to create a national institution and gallery of art to bring art and education to the American people. There are so many important paintings in this collection, and it would be impossible to show them all. So I'm going to start with this epic painting, especially inspiring as we get ready to celebrate America's 250th birthday next month. It honors a critical turning point in the American colonists' war against Great Britain. Painted by German-American artist Emanuel Leutz, this painting quickly became an iconic image. Leutz grew up in America, then returned to Germany as an adult, where he conceived the idea for this painting during the revolutions of 1848. So while depicting an important historical event in the fight for America's independence, this painting is also known for its historical inaccuracies, which include that the flag shown is a later version not adopted until a little more than a year after the crossing. Also of note is that even in the dead of winter, the Delaware River would not have contained jagged icebergs. Most obviously, if Washington, who is shown in the wrong style military hat. If he had been perched on the edge of the wrong size boat and type of boat, and if he was standing as depicted, he would have tipped the boat over, sending him and his crew into the freezing water. Lloyd's goal was not to make a historical documentary, but to craft an inspirational symbol of American perseverance, unity, and fortitude, and at that, he definitely succeeded. Now, Rosa Bonheur is widely considered to have been the most famous woman painter of the 19th century. It was this painting that brought her widespread fame. It's a kind of Cecil B. DeMille spectacular that depicts a rowdy parade of human and animal flesh. It has the spirit of an epic battle scene, and it was first shown to critical acclaim at the Salon of 1853. After the exhibition, Bonheur reworked parts of the painting and it now bears the date showing 1852 to 1855. The Horse Fair is an enormous painting. It's 8 feet by 16 and a half feet and is thought to be the largest animal painting in existence. In preparation, Bonheur visited slaughterhouses and performed dissections to learn the animal's bone and muscle structure. For a year and a half, she made sketches twice a week at the horse market in Paris. Bonheur captures the horse's power, grace, and majesty, paying little attention to people. The horses are moving in a circular motion, some rearing in positions that are not easy to maintain, and the dust is flying. The overall impression is of great movement. This painting went on a 3-year tour of the United States, and while on tour, Alexander Turney Stewart, who was credited with opening the country's first department store in Lower Manhattan, purchased the painting. In 1887, Cornelius Vanderbilt purchased the Horse Fair from Stewart's estate for $53,000, and Vanderbilt gave it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where it remains one of the Met's best known, if not largest, works of art. John Singer Sargent was an Italian-born American painter known for his portraits of the wealthy and privileged. Sargent was the darling of Paris until he painted the 23-year-old Virginie Avenue Gautreau. Born in Louisiana, Virginie's mother took her and her sisters to live in Paris after her father died during the Civil War. There, she became a celebrated beauty and married Pierre Gautreau, a Parisian banker. After meeting Virginie, Sargent wrote of wanting to paint her portrait. In all of Sargent's sketches of her, and it is believed that there are over a dozen, not one sketch shows her looking at us directly. We see in his studies that he struggled on her final pose. Now, Sargent wanted us to gaze upon Virginie as an object of beauty. Little did he know just how effective he would be. It took well over a year to complete the painting, and Sargent exhibited the portrait as Madame X at the 1884 Paris Salon, where it caused a sensation. The portrait, with its infamous plunging neckline, white powdered skin, and arrogantly cocked head, originally featured an off-the-shoulder dress strap, which made the overall effective more daring and sensual. This painting was judged to be too provocatively erotic. Sargent changed the strap to sit on her shoulder to try to dampen the furor, but the damage had been done. French commissions dried up, and Sargent told a friend that he contemplated giving up painting for music. The portrait aroused such a negative reaction that it prompted Sargent to move to London, and eventually he sold Madame X to the Met in 1917. His most controversial work, it is now considered one of Sargent's best works and was his personal favorite. So this work is an example of abstract expressionist Jackson Pollock's poured painting style and is often considered one of his most notable works. Here, there is no focal point, no hierarchy of elements. Every bit of the surface is equally significant. With this work, Pollock was at the height of his powers. His paintings had become a record of his artistic performances. Pollock's technique, the epitome of what critic Harold Rosenberg would call action painting, rarely permitted the brush to directly touch the canvas. Pollock said, "On the floor, I am more at ease. I feel nearer, more a part of the painting, since this way I can walk around it, work from the four sides, and literally be in the painting." Size here is especially significant. This canvas is over 17 feet wide. It overpowers you, enveloping the viewer who confronts it, as it did for Pollock as he created it. In 1957, soon after Pollock's death, the Met acquired this work from his estate. So moving forward in art time, head to MoMA for a look at modern and contemporary art masterpieces. In the late 1920s, three progressive and influential patrons of the arts, Lily B. Bliss, Mary Quinn Sullivan, and Abby Aldrich Rockefeller, saw a need to challenge the conservative policies of traditional museums and to establish an institution devoted exclusively to modern art, and were instrumental in creating the Museum of Modern Art. The collection has grown over time and includes many world-famous masterpieces. A highlight of the museum, Van Gogh's night sky in this work is a field of swirling energy dominated by the bright moon at the right and Venus at center left. Below the exploding stars, the village is a place of quiet order. Van Gogh was inspired by the view from his window at the asylum in Saint Remy in southern France, where he spent a year from 1889 to 1890. The vision took place at night. Yet this painting, among hundreds of artworks Van Gogh made this year, was created in several sessions during the day under entirely different atmospheric conditions. The picturesque village nestled below the hills was based on other views, as it could not be seen from his window, and the cypress it left appears much closer than it was. Van Gogh did not paint the sky as he would have observed it with strict accuracy, but rather used dramatic swirling forms to create a sense of motion and cosmic energy. And while Van Gogh did incorporate some accurate observations of the night sky, he altered celestial shapes and added a sense of glow. The Starry Night was both an exercise in observation and a clear departure from it. MoMA acquired the Starry Night in 1941 through an exchange with Paul Rosenberg Gallery. MoMA traded three paintings from the Lily B. Bliss collection for Van Gogh's painting, which Rosenberg had purchased from Georgette Van Stoke. The acquisition marked the first time a New York museum had acquired a Van Gogh painting. Also at MoMA, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon was a painting unlike anything Spanish artist Pablo Picasso had ever painted before, a work that would profoundly influence the direction of art in the 20th century. The Avignon of the work's title is a reference to a street in Barcelona famed for its brothel, and the painting shows five nude prostitutes with faces inspired by Iberian sculpture and African masks. These faces are far from realistic. Picasso wrote, "In the Demoiselle d'Avignon, I painted a profile nose into a frontal view of a face. I had to depict it sideways so that I could give it a name, so that I could call it a nose." This work is considered the precursor and inspiration of Cubism. Rather than seeing art as a two-dimensional form, Cubism focused on how art could be seen in a number of ways, dimensions, and angles. Picasso's new Cubist style shocked, appalled, and fascinated the art world. With this first piece, Picasso was greatly criticized, but today it is one of the most iconic pieces he created. Purchased in 1907, the painting was first purchased by Jacques Doucet in 1924 and later included in an exhibition at Jacques Seligman and Company in 1937. MoMA's first director, Alfred H. Barr Jr., persuaded the museum to acquire the painting, and the painting has been on view at MoMA since its 1937 acquisition. Now, Spanish surrealist artist Salvador Dali made several trips to Paris where he met with influential artists, including Picasso. Dali also met with Marot and Magritte, who introduced him to surrealism. Dali was an avid reader of Freud's psychoanalytical theories and considered dreams and imagination as central to human thought. Dali's major contribution to the surrealist movement was what he called the paranoid critical method, a mental exercise of accessing the subconscious to enhance artistic creativity. Dali used it to create a reality from his dreams and subconscious thoughts, mentally challenging reality to what he wanted it to be. This well-known surrealist piece introduced the image of the soft melting pocket watch. The original watch at the bottom left is covered in ants. Dali often used ants in his painting as a symbol of decay. One of the blue watches straddles a strange biomorphic form that looks like some kind of mollusks, but is meant to be the deflated head of Dali. In what Dali called hand-painted dream photographs, there is, however, a nod to the real. The distant golden cliffs are those on the coast of Catalonia, which was Dali's home. When New York dealer Julian Levy bought this painting for $250 in 1931, he called it 10 by 14 inches of Dali dynamite. This painting excited viewers even as it puzzled them. One critic urged readers to, quote, page Dr. Freud to uncover the meaning in the canvas. In 1934, it was donated to the Museum of Modern Art by an anonymous patron who had purchased it from the Levy Gallery. American artist Jasper Johns created this iconic work, one of over 40 works he made based on the American flag. The 48 stars and red and white stripes depicted here show an American flag from the year this work was made. Johns noted that using a recognizable image took care of a great deal for him because he didn't have to design it. He made this work by combining panels, paint, and encaustic, a mixture of pigment and melted wax that captured the paint's drips, smears, and brushstrokes. Beneath the flag's familiar stripes, we can make out a collage of newspaper scraps whose dates locate this commonplace symbol with a particular moment. This work was a gift to MoMA by Philip Johnson in honor of Alfred H. Barr Jr., the first director of the museum. Now, the Frick Collection in New York was established in 1935 to preserve the art collection of the industrialist Henry Clay Frick, who had made his fortune in coke and steel. The collection consists of 14th to 19th century European paintings, as well as other pieces of European fine and decorative art. It is located on 70th Street between Fifth Avenue and Central Park in a Beaux-Art mansion designed by Henry Clay Frick. And you probably heard that the Frick collection reopened in April of last year after a major renovation. So while Frick amassed a significant collection of art, including paintings, sculptures, and decorative arts, much of the museum's current holdings, including decorative objects and furniture, were acquired after his death through donations and acquisitions by the trustees. And this work, though, was purchased by Frick himself in 1912. Although German by birth, Hans Holbein the Younger is widely considered one of the greatest portraitists of the 16th century. His primary legacy is the visual identity of the Tudor dynasty. Holbein was a portraitist to Henry VIII. Holbein's penetrating, hyper-realistic paintings of Henry VIII and his court defined how history views the era. This is an iconic portrait by Holbein of influential Tudor scholar and parliamentarian Sir Thomas More. King Henry VIII executed More for failing to support Henry's divorce and his break with the Catholic Church. For this reason, More is a Catholic saint. He looks powerful and impressive in this portrait, which shows him wearing rich clothing and a thick gold necklace that signifies his service to the King of England. Hans Holbein's rendering of the red velvet sleeves is particularly perfect. Of the 36 paintings attributed to Vermeer, 12 can be found in American public collections, and 3 of those are at the Frick, purchased by Frick himself. In what may be one of the first works of his mature style, here Vermeer transforms the theme of a girl entertaining her suitor, which was already popular in Dutch art, into a dazzling study of light-filled space. The dark foil of the officer's silhouette dramatizes both the illusion of depth and the brilliant play of light over the woman and the room's furnishings. The map of Holland on the far wall, oriented with west at the top, was first published in 1621. Both the map and the chairs appear in other paintings by Vermeer. In this second work, Vermeer shows a duet or music lesson momentarily interrupted. Music making was associated in the 17th century with courtship. In this painting, the amorous theme is reinforced by the picture of Cupid, which is dimly visible in the background. And here, Vermeer explores the relationship between mistress and maids and the writing and receiving of letters, two popular themes in the art and literature of the period. This work also shows Vermeer's technical skill. He has bravura brushstrokes suggesting the pleating of the yellow mantle, shorter, bold strokes signify flickering light reflected on the glassware, and dots of impasto convey the shimmer of the pearls. Continuing north, you may want to try out the art scene in Boston. The Museum of Fine Arts in Boston was founded in 1870 by a group of civic leaders as a public space for art discovery and enjoyment. It initially utilized the art holdings of the Boston Athenaeum Library as its core collection. The museum first opened to the public in Copley Square in 1876 and the museum relocated to its current location on Huntington Avenue in the Fenway Kenmore neighborhood in 1909. This famous John Singer Sargent work was painted in Paris in the autumn of 1882, one of a number of portraits of members of the American expatriate community that Sargent did in the French capital in the late 1870s and early 1880s. Sargent was a friend of the girls' parents. He painted the four Bolt girls in the foyer of their apartment. While the parents may have initially approached Sargent to make a traditional portrait, they supported his ambition to create something more unusual, and the girls are presented individually rather than interacting. Only the youngest, Julia, engages the viewer. And unlike typical portraits that clearly depict their subjects, the features of two of the girls are obscured by shadows. The lack of connection between the girls stymied critics when the painting was first displayed. The two Japanese vases were prized family possessions. Their unusual size in relation to the girls makes the interior seem kind of strange and also sort of magical. The vases were donated to the museum by the family and sit alongside the painting. And the painting itself was donated to the Museum of Fine Arts by the Bolt sisters in 1919 in memory of their father. The Fog Warning is one of several paintings on marine subjects by the late 19th century American painter Winslow Homer. The painting's tale is disturbing rather than charming, as indicated by the halibut in the boat. The fisherman in this picture has been successful, but the hardest task of the day, the return to the main ship, is still ahead of him. He turns to look at the horizon, measuring the distance to the mother ship and to safety. The seas are choppy and the boat rocks high on the waves, making it clear that the journey home will require considerable physical effort. But more threatening is the approaching fog bank, whose streamers echo, even mock, the fisherman's profile. This painting was donated to the MFA in 1894 by an anonymous donor. So we've been traveling around the Midwest and up the Eastern Seaboard, but we also have a lot of wonderful art right here in Connecticut. So if a drive of about an hour or so from here is more in your plans, we have the Yale collections nearby where you can see works you might have thought you would have had to have traveled much further to find. The Yale University Art Gallery was founded in 1832 when history painter and portraitist John Trumbull sold 28 paintings and 60 miniature portraits to the university. Trumbull himself designed a neoclassical building to exhibit the works, and the collection has grown and includes many works by world-famous artists as well as by Trumbull. In the Declaration of Independence, John Trumbull represents the moment when the committee appointed to draw up the document submitted Thomas Jefferson's draft for the consideration of the Continental Congress. Jefferson stands at the center, surrounded by John Adams, Roger Sherman, Robert Livingston, and Benjamin Franklin, and presents the document to John Hancock, President of Congress. Trumbull consulted Adams and Jefferson about who should actually be in the scene. They urged that all the delegates be included, even those who were not present or those who had opposed the declaration and did not sign. The goal was to preserve the exact likenesses of the extraordinary individuals who had put their lives and fortunes on the line. Trumbull also took liberties with the interior, ornamenting the scene with military flags and trophies. He covered the windows with red velvet draperies instead of the Venetian blinds that were actually in place. And instead of the simple wooden Windsor chairs that furnished the room, he seated the congressmen in elegant mahogany chairs and Hancock in an upholstered and gilded version. These stylish additions may have been intended to elevate the character of a provincial assembly by conveying a more sophisticated image of America. And Yale University Art Gallery received this work directly from the Trumbull collection in 1832. The Allegory of Intemperance by Dutch artist Hieronymus Bosch can be seen at the Yale University Art Gallery. The painting is a fragment. It was the bottom part of the left panel, and along with the Ship of Fools, it formed the left wing of a triptych. Together, the two paintings symbolize gluttony, one of the seven deadly sins. The right wing of the triptych, Death and the Miser, embodies avarice. The missing central panel most likely represented the remaining sins: pride, envy, lust, anger, and sloth. As you can see, the remaining three parts of the triptych are displayed at three different they were displayed as three different works of art at three different museums. In the painting at Yale, gluttony is personified by the swimmers at the upper left, who have gathered around a large wine barrel straddled by a pot-bellied peasant. Another man swims closer to shore, his vision obscured by the meat pie balanced on his head. On the right is a pair of lovers in a tent. That gluttony and drunkenness lead to lust was a lesson that the moralizers never tired of bringing home to their audiences. So, this well-known image by Van Gogh shows a striking interior scene of a cafe in Arles, France. The building depicts a late-night cafe described by Van Gogh as revealing the, quote, terrible passions of humanity. The painting is known for its vivid colors and contrasting lighting, creating an atmosphere of unease and reflecting Van Gogh's perspective of the darker side of nightlife. Van Gogh's use of red and green in the night cafe was quite exceptional and dominates this painting. He wrote, "In my picture of the night cafe, I have tried to express the idea that the cafe is a place where one can ruin oneself, go mad, or commit a crime." Stephen Carlton Clark, a 1903 Yale graduate, left the night cafe to Yale in 1961. Nearby, Hartford is also worth an art trip. The Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art is the oldest continuously operating public art museum in the United States, opening its doors to the public in 1844. The Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art was founded by Daniel Wadsworth, one of the first major American art patrons. So this painting was the first religious canvas done by Italian Baroque artist Caravaggio. It is thought to have been commissioned by Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte. It shows Saint Francis of Assisi, the cardinal's named saint, at the moment of receiving the signs of the stigmata, the wounds left in Christ's body by the crucifixion. The story is told by one of Francis's companions, Brother Leo. In 1224, Francis retired to the wilderness with a small number of his followers to contemplate God. On the mountainside at night, Brother Leo saw a six-winged seraph come down to Francis in answer to the saint's prayers that he might have known both Christ's suffering and his love. Caravaggio's painting is less dramatic than the account given by Leo. The six-winged seraph is replaced by a two-winged angel, and there is none of the violent confrontation described by Leo. Just the gentle seeming angel appearing far larger than the unconscious saint, and Francis's companions in the middle distance, almost invisible in the darkness. This painting was purchased by the Wadsworth in 1943 and was the first by Caravaggio to enter a public collection in the United States. It is considered to be one of the most important Baroque paintings in America. French Impressionist painter Claude Monet painted the beach at Trouville in the summer of 1870 during the weeks he spent there with his family. It is one of 9 works that Monet painted of Trouville that summer. Trouville was a popular and fashionable resort on the Normandy coast, complete with wide sandy beaches and impressive seaside architecture. Monet depicted the guests of the fashionable Hotel de Roche Noire strolling up and down the boardwalk, and also depicted the effect of the sunlight reflected on land and water. While viewers today find these straightforward depictions of leisure time activities quite pleasing, they were actually controversial in the 1870s. Monet was criticized both for his choice of subject matter, which was considered too trite, and for his summary treatment of the human form. But this work was purchased by the Athenaeum in 1948 and is today very well loved and appreciated. And of course, they have a Renoir. In 1873, French Impressionist Pierre-Auguste Renoir captured his close friend and fellow artist Claude Monet, painting in the garden of their shared residence in Argenteuil. Renoir shows Monet standing in front of his easel, painting beautiful flowers such as red dahlias. Monet is holding his brush in one hand while his palette rests on the other. An umbrella and a box of paints can be seen under Monet's easel. Overall, Renoir's depiction of Monet captures an intimate moment between two close friends who shared a passion for art and nature. The piece serves as a reminder that some of the greatest works are created not in grand studios, but in everyday environments where creativity thrives. Also in the area is the New Britain Museum of American Art, the first museum dedicated solely to American art in this country. The museum traces its beginnings to the New Britain Institute, which was chartered in 1853 to foster learning by a community of newly arrived immigrants who worked in the city's numerous factories. In 1901, the Institute moved from rented spaces to a new, larger building in town that accommodated 75,000 volumes, a children's room, and a history room, as well as a windowless art room in which portraits of prominent figures, both national and local, were displayed. In 1903, a 20,000 gift of gold $20,000 gift of gold bonds from industrialist John Butler Talcott created funds to purchase, quote, modern oil paintings. Subsequent purchases further defined modern to mean American works of art, now numbering more than 8,300. Thomas Cole is widely considered the founder of the Hudson River School. Cole painted landscapes of the Hudson River region, achieving his greatest successes by painting scenes of autumn in the Catskills. The brilliance of the colors impressed the public, although foreign audiences did not really believe that these colors were true to life. Cole wrote, "There is one season when the American forest surpasses all the world in gorgeousness. That is the autumnal. And then every hill and dale is riant in the luxury of color. Every hue is there, from the liveliest green to deepest purple, from the most golden yellow to the intensest crimson. The artist looks despairingly upon the glowing landscape, and in the old world, his truest imitations of the American forest at this season are called falsely bright and scenes in fairyland." Cole was not alone in worrying that the foreign public would not understand his work. When fellow artist Jasper Cropsey exhibited an autumnal painting in London, he sent for dried leaves from America to prove to European critics that he had indeed accurately depicted their colors. In the center of this painting, Cole has included a small figure of a Native American. By 1826, the Native American population in the Catskill region had been decimated by disease and warfare. Cole's inclusion of the figure would have enhanced the symbolic associations of the painting. The work entered the collection of the New Britain Museum in 1945. Here, American Impressionist Child Hassam depicted the Grand Prix, which was the final race in the spring season, held at the Longchamp track in the Bois de Boulogne in Paris. The Grand Prix signaled the closing of the society season before summer vacations. The brilliant sunlight and small shadows in Hassam's painting indicated time shortly after noon, the hour that racegoers came to the track. And there, people like those in that Hassam depicts would spend the early afternoon picnicking, sipping champagne, eyeing one another's costumes, and placing their bets. The New Britain Museum's painting is closely related to a study of the same scene in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Done earlier, the Boston study is smaller in scale and more subdued in color. Hassam said that colleagues had seen his study, urged him to paint it larger. He responded, "I hope I shall do it as well as the smaller one, which I thought was successful in some ways." Hassam made few changes to the composition, but brightened the palette and loosened his brushwork. And the carefully calculated result marked his first decisive foray into Impressionism. In 1932, American regionalist artist Thomas Hart Benton painted The Arts of Life in America, a set of large murals for an early site of the Whitney Museum of American Art. 4 huge wall panels and 4 more around the ceiling depict the arts of everyday life: music, games, dance, and sports. They also show regional diversity, unemployment, and crime. Painted at the height of the Great Depression, they give a comprehensive portrait of life in the 1930s. Some socially radical groups attacked the work for being too provincial. However, favorable press reviews praised Benton for speaking, quote, the plain language of the Midwest. When the Whitney moved venues in 1954, the panels, considered out of date and surplus, were purchased by the New Britain Museum of American Art and are on view there. So, of course, there are thousands of more museums in America, and they all have wonderful collections. I'm going to end tonight's lecture with a very quick look at museums that have at least one famous painting in case you are passing through any of these areas. If you happen to be looking for more to see while in New York City, this famous portrait by Austrian symbolist artist Gustav Klimt can be seen at the Neue Gallery on the Upper East Side. The painting was commissioned by Adele Bloch-Bauer's husband and is a masterpiece of Klimt's golden style, characterized by the use of gold leaf and intricate geometric patterns. The portrait is notable for its blend of naturalistic facial details with a highly ornamental decorative style. And this painting is revolutionary for both its timeless beauty and its provenance. In 1938, the portrait was one of 5 Klimt paintings seized by the Nazis from the Bloch-Bauer's home. For decades, the masterpiece was displayed in Vienna, where it was renamed Woman in Gold to conceal the sitter's identity. Over the course of decades, surviving heir Maria Altman fought for the return of her family's property. In 2005, a panel hearing before the United States Supreme Court determined that the paintings were to be re were to be restituted to their heirs, and this was a landmark restitution case. In 2006, Ronald S. Lauder acquired Portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer the first for the Neue Gallery, and it has been on permanent view at the museum since, adhering to the wishes of the family. If you happen to be passing through Bentonville, Arkansas, Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art is a museum of American art founded by Alice Walton, which officially opened in November of 2011. Rosie the Riveter was an idealized mascot for women workers. First coined in 1942 song, her identity came to represent the newly empowered woman. In American artist Norman Rockwell's depiction, she combines femininity with a commanding muscularity. Rosie wears men's clothes, holds a riveter in her lap as she pauses from her work to eat her lunch. America's entry into World War II created a demand for women's labor as the defense industry grew and men enlisted in the military. Women were encouraged to join the workforce as a patriotic service to the country. They also spearheaded support organizations and fundraising groups that supported the war effort. Painted for the cover of the Saturday Evening Post, the painting received mass distribution on their cover on Memorial Day, May 29, 1943. It was given to the United States Treasury Department's second war loan drive in 1943. It then passed through a couple of private collections before being purchased in 2007 by Alice Walton. If you're heading to Southern California, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art is a great stop. The Treachery of Images, also known as This Is Not a Pipe, is one of the most famous yet persistently puzzling works in the history of art. One of the word image series of paintings in which Belgian surrealist artist René Magritte sought to challenge linguistic and visual conventions. It was also part of his lifelong quest to show that images could be equal to words in the expression of consciousness. Presented in the style of an ad with very neat cursive text forming a slogan-like caption under the image of the pipe, the painting prompts the viewer to ponder its conflicting messages. After sale by Magritte to a private collector, this work passed through another private collection before being purchased at a Sotheby's auction by LACMA in 1978. So nearby in Pasadena, the Huntington Art Gallery is home to The Blue Boy, a full-length portrait by English artist Thomas Gainsborough. One of Gainsborough's most famous works, it depicts a young boy dressed in a striking blue satin suit standing in a landscape. The painting is known for its vibrant colors, especially the blue, and Gainsborough's loose painterly brushwork. Henry and Arabella Huntington purchased the Blue Boy in 1921 for $728,000. At that time, the highest price ever paid for a painting. By bringing a British treasure to the United States, the Huntingtons imbued an already well-known image with even greater notoriety on both sides of the Atlantic. So there are so many more museums around the country that are worth visiting. I'm sure you're all thinking of them. We hated leaving so many out, but we hope that this has sparked you into wanting to visit some new spots or revisit some old favorites. And we're going to be back on Wednesday, June 24th, with early American portraiture from fine art to folk art. So I'm going to stop my share, and I thank you for coming. Here we go. So thank you all for joining us. I don't know if there's anything in the chat. There's nothing in the chat box. If you have any questions or comments, we can unmute you. Anybody have anything? I recommend a visit to the Barns. Yes, especially since it's in Philadelphia, it's much easier to get to now. No, you're welcome. So thank you all. I hope it's inspired Another way to see these works also is remind people that they can take a trip to a lot of these museums' websites where so much now is on display, and they do some great discussions of paintings on a lot of the museums' websites as well.
Thank you so much, Jody, for sharing your knowledge of art with us.
So thank you, Louise,
Um,
for having us, and I will see you or Robin. I'm not sure which one of us is doing later this month. It might be Robin.
okay.
I think it's Robin.
So this recording is being recorded, and I will share with everyone who attended. And also everyone who attended, I will forward the link to the June 24th link presentation as well. And
All right,
thank you all for attending.
everyone have a good night
Good
and
night.
enjoy the beautiful weather that's been coming our way.